Hello, my wonderful following YouTubers. I am Will the Werewolf. Well, actually, after lots of questions, this isn't Will the Werewolf. This is an actor. My name's actually Arthur, and I read out the transcriptions that are sent to us by Will. So, yeah. Anyway, I will now read the transcription that Will has sent to us. This isn't an interview, it's just a written transcription. We're on part 6 of Will being captured by the army. He's been captured, he's been imprisoned, he's been interviewed, he's now got a boss, and he's now working for the army, and he's been trained by the British Army. What he's going to talk about now, or what I'm going to play the role of, is him doing some jobs for the British Army and how having a werewolf can actually be very useful. So this story is called Killing the Killers of the Killers. Another job was in the beautiful city of Berlin, following my mark. That's professional ease for my target, down into the subway system. It was about 2:30 p.m. on a bright autumnal day in early October, and the city, well, I have to admit, it's pretty damn beautiful. My posit and I had been following this guy for some time. For this particular plan to work, I would need the man to realise that he was being chased, apparently. Yes, I don't know why either. This was one of them need-to-know things, so I assumed that it was for that reason that I did not need to know. It had taken him quite a while to notice me, but once he knew that he was being followed, he'd done all the usual steps that he'd been trained to try and lose that tail. In fact, he felt he had been successful, as he had lost me completely and was busy on his phone to his handler trying to decide whether or not to go ahead with the task he'd been set. Maybe that was it. Maybe my bosses had to have him phone someone so they could trace it or something. I don't know. Who gives one anyway? I would just get to kill him. That was the main thing. The rest of it was just, it was pretty boring, to be honest. The thing is, as you know, I did not need to see him. I had my posit, who could do the following without the target having any idea. The posit is my wolf soul. He's a separate entity to me, and he's like a big wolf ghost that only I can see. And we communicate telepathically. Ooh, there's almost poetry. So, yeah, that's my posit. If you've listened to the other videos, then hopefully you'll know something about him. He's called Fenrir. Pretty particular. The posit would be walking next to him and giving me feedback on his location as the guy did all he could do to evade me. The posit was a homing beacon for me. I could always sense where he was and find him. We were linked by telepathic GPS. We had to be together to form the werewolf. I felt lonely without him. On top of that, I didn't need to see the guy because I could also follow the stench path he led. Once I could recognise his odour, I could follow him anywhere. I had smelt the jacket that he ditched into the bin at his first opportunity in order to evade me, and now I did not need to keep him in view to follow him. He left his own personal trail of odour as a perfect track for me to follow, and had posits sat on his heels looking at the loser. This was really too easy. I would need to make it a little more difficult for myself, or what was the point? The mark was a Kyle Porter, once an American Special Forces, his tactical whatever, and an ace sniper, etc. blah blah, whatever, the best of the best, yada yada yada, the usual macho bullshit nonsense. He had a purple heart and a blowjob from some admiral or other as reward for killing unknowing Afghanis from a mile away with a big gun. These guys think they are the bollocks and that they fight for country and God bless America and all that. I always love meeting, greeting, and sometimes eating these very macho characters, these supermen. Amazing how their spirits and their macho ideals tend to change when they meet me for the first and predominantly the last time. Also, his ethics had slightly changed. He was no longer doing it for God and country. He was doing it for his bank account. I was led to believe that this one was very good at his job, and he was on his way at this moment to take out his next target. I'd been told the target was some Chinese business person that the British government had some kind of interest in or something. As usual, I wasn't given a clue. I was on a need-to-know basis. Well, need-to-know-ish. I actually didn't give a shit if I was, to be honest. I got to kill and torture, as I said before, with no fear of consequences. In fact, I might get a purple-headed erection medal and a blowjob from the Queen for it. 1 or 2 up from an Admiral, eh, Kyle? Who knows? Is it that? No, it's a Victoria Cross and a blowjob from Prince Charles in this country. Is that far superior? No, I'll give it a miss. The posit watched him as he spoke on his mobile. Once off the line, and after a very rushed and harsh conversation, he stood to have a cigarette while deep in thought and running his hands through his thick, dark hair as he contemplated. It took him some time and some soul-searching, but it seemed that he decided to continue with his task. I could sense that his confidence had grown, and he must have felt happy at the success in dropping me. My posit sniggered. I just got the telepathic thought, gotcha. Potsdamer Platz was unusually quiet for this time of the day. It was now 6:30 p.m. and dark. He descended to the subway level to embark on a journey across the city. He was obviously in a rush and not being too careful about anything. He boarded the train running towards Pankow, and I jumped onto the same subway a couple of carriages down from his. This was the risky bit where I could potentially lose him. I needed posit eyes to be on him in order to know where and when he would exit the train. I very carefully made my way through the carriages until I could see my posit and be in a position where I could leave the train with them when they stepped off. Through the posit's eyes, I could see the man as though it was with my own eyes. As we get closer, my posit and I, we share our senses in a much stronger symbiosis. I could now literally taste the guy we were so close. Posit sat in the gangway of the train, staring right into the eyes of the mark. It was cool to see this big, huge, fuck-off black wolf sat with his nose to the mark's nose, and no one else could see him. Kyle sat calmly reading a book, looking relaxed and feeling pretty comfortable according to Posit's senses. He was a real pro, this one. Obviously, he had had extensive experience, and that had led him to being relaxed while working. He even yawned as he casually sat in his seat reading. I felt that he was overconfident, although his taste in books was good. Stephen King's Cujo, nice and almost appropriate. Well, almost. 4 or 5 stations flew by, and then another American, you can smell them, they taste of like cinnamon, it's like a cinnamon scent, climbed on board the train. He had a large duffel bag over his shoulder, which he removed to sit next to our boy Kyle. Nothing was said between them, but the man got off at the very next station without his bag. He got off, his bag didn't. Once he'd gone, Kyle reached for it with a leg and dragged it along the ground and held it between his knees. This must be the weapon he was going to use or something, or maybe he was just nicking it, I don't know. I didn't really care, to be honest, let's face it. He got a bag thing. At the next station, he waited in his seat until the last second and rushed from the train just before the doors closed. I followed him as he went. My posit was keeping him in view, and I followed my posit on my internal GPS. This stuff was so simple when you had a posit. He'd exited the train at Rosa Luxemburg Platz and had swung the bag over his left shoulder. It looked completely out of place when paired with the tailored suit that he wore. We tailed him as he made his way along the main road eastward, following the street until he took a left at turn at a hotel that had a park across from it. He put out another cigarette after another couple of deep puffs and entered the Soho House Hotel. I quickly caught up with the posit, who had asked to wait, and we followed Kyle's scent trail to an elevator. And shit, that was a mistake. He could have got off on any floor. I'd held back my posit when I really should have not have. I don't like being far from his comfort and security for long, it's not nice. But I'd fucked up at this point. Now I wasted a lot of time by having to stop the car at each level to find out where he'd left the lift. Finally we found the scent trail. He'd got off at the very top of the hotel. Here there was a bar with a pool closed off on the roof for repairs. A bit too much of a coincidence for my liking, the fact that this place would be free of people and stuff. Well, it would lead to fewer witnesses and stop me from creating all that collateral damage I like to create when I get a chance. You know, if people die around the job, the government people kind of turn a blind eye to it and cover it up. So I often extended my jollies to others where possible. His trail had led out of the door and onto the rooftop. The top of the hotel overlooked the park opposite, and he was kneeling, preparing his rifle to take a shot. Again, he showed he had expertise in his trade, as he had quickly and easily put together the weapon while smoking another stinky cigarette. I nodded at Posit, and he went and stood next to the man so I could see the target that he was scoping. The rifle muzzle was pointed at a train of running people, and I could see that he was slowing his breath, ready to pull the trigger. I had to move fast, and in the blink of an eye I had crossed a few yards to the kneeling man. He had no time to react as I smashed his skull against the concrete parapet of the hotel, and his head exploded as it made contact with the block and showered me in brains and blood. He died instantly, but he'd still managed to pull that fucking trigger, and the rifle fired as it fell, the bullet just missing his target by the size of a mosquito's penis. I continued my sprint and launched myself off the top of the building, absorbing the deposit as I fell to the road below. I landed in the centre of an unfortunate but fall-absorbing taxi in the middle of the street. By the time I'd caught my taxi, I was in a fully formed werewolf that made a superhero landing on the top of the cab. This must have looked very cool, but had the downside of crushing all those that were inside the cab flat. Once I'd finished my movie moment pose, I continued my run through the panicking drivers towards the park. As I entered the park through its main gateway, running as fast as I could, people reacted with momentary pause of disbelief, then panic, which kicked in, and lots of them, well, most of them, running away and screaming. I continued to run down the path, following the jogging target, and managed to catch them on the last corner. I hit him from behind and eviscerated him with long upstroke from a claw. I did that just to piss the chief off, really. I knew I wasn't supposed to kill the man, but sometimes a werewolf has got to do what a werewolf has got to do, and as long as it's not you that I do, then it's fine. It's not as if he could give me a bollocking later, could they? His bodyguards, the guy's bodyguards, reacted by drawing pistols, but by the time they had them in position, I'd already moved on to the real target. It was his assistant that I needed. My task had to been find the mole in the organisation, and now I had her. Just before the shot, she had blatantly pointed out the target for the shooter. I ran her down easily. She had turned to look at me in her panic and tripped and fallen to the floor, skinning her knees and palms on the tarmac of the path. Rule 1. Never look back while running away is always great advice, although she would probably not get the chance to make this mistake twice. I snatched her up from the ground with my left hand and continued down the path towards the road where a van sat with its back doors open. I leapt in the back with my prey, and the doors slammed shut behind me. The engine gunned into life, and the vehicle indicated out into traffic and smoothly drove away. The two soldiers in the back of the van could not back up any further than they'd already tried. They were literally pinning their backs to the bulkhead that separated the cab from the rest of the vehicle. They knew what I was, they could see what I was, and they were really struggling to deal with what they saw. Dealing with the reality of me was something different. I looked at my little Asian prize now as she sprawled in the back of the van. She had tears running from her pretty face, and blood was pretty evident from the places that I'd held her around the waist. I smiled at her with a wolfy smile and then slowly changed back to myself. This was probably much scarier in some ways, as she'd been stared at by a sweaty naked man. "Hey babe, welcome to the horror show," I whispered to her. Eventually, the van swept into an underground car park, and I got out, now fully dressed, as the hooded little lady was dragged most unceremoniously from the van into the boot of a waiting sedan that shot out of the place with spinning tyres. The chief was waiting for me in a black SUV by himself. Gosh, he was pissed off with me. Oh, how he yelled and shouted as we strode through the traffic back to the hotel. Apparently, I had caused an international incident and stuff. It would take years and all sorts of promises and things to sort it out. Fen and I giggled like naughty toddlers. Why the fuck did you do? Why fucking goddamn you, Will? Why? Shouted the little purple-headed chief. It's 'cause I'm a fucking werewolf, that's why. And I'm a bit of a dick, I replied, folding my arms and laughing.